The silver chains burned my wrists as Alpha King Kale dragged me through the great hall, past the very throne where he'd marked me as his Luna 3 moons ago, and I felt our mate bond snap like a brittle twig the moment he threw me beyond the territory stones. I hit the frozen ground hard, my white ceremonial gown tearing against the rocks. Blood bloomed across the silk like red flowers opening at dawn. Behind me, the entire Crescent Dominion had gathered to watch their Luna fall. 3 moons. That's all I'd had as queen. 90 days of waking in Kale's arms, of feeling his heartbeat sync with mine, of believing the goddess had blessed me beyond measure when she paired a common white wolf with the most powerful alpha in the realm. Now those same arms had thrown me away like garbage. Kale. My voice cracked as I struggled to my knees. Please, just let me explain. You murdered my mother. His voice held nothing. No rage. No grief. Just the cold emptiness of a man who'd already made his decision. You poisoned her tea and watched her die in agony for 6 hours. I didn't. I would never. The herbs were found in your chambers. He towered over me at the edge of the territory stones. Golden eyes that once looked at me with such tenderness now flat as a predator sizing up prey. Your scent was on the cup. 3 witnesses saw you alone with her that morning. Because she asked me to visit. She was teaching me the Luna ceremonies. Tears streamed down my face, freezing in the mountain air. Kale, you know me. Look at me through our bond. Feel what I feel. You'll know I'm telling the truth. Something flickered in his expression. For one heartbeat, I saw my mate. The man who'd chased me through moonlit forests, who'd held me through my first shift as Luna, who'd whispered against my throat that I was his miracle. Then a delicate hand touched his arm. Vanya. She'd been Kale's companion before I arrived. A beta female with ambitions that reached far beyond her station. Beautiful in the sharp way of broken glass, with midnight hair and eyes like polished onyx. The pack had expected him to choose her as Luna. When the mate bond pulled him to me instead. A white wolf from a minor pack with no political connections. Vanya's smile had never wavered, but her eyes had promised murder. My king, she murmured. Don't let her manipulate you. White wolves are known for their deception. She probably orchestrated the bond itself through dark magic. That's not possible, I said. Mate bonds are sacred. They can't be faked. Vanya's lips curved. Then explain how a nobody Omega caught the attention of an Alpha King. Because the goddess chose us. I looked only at Kale, willing him to remember. The night of the summit moon. You felt it before you even saw me. You told me your wolf went insane, clawing to get to me. That's not magic, Kale. That's fate. He flinched. For one moment, one terrible, hopeful moment, I thought I'd reached him. Then his face hardened to stone. Fate made a mistake. He raised his hand, and the pack elders stepped forward carrying a silver chalice and a bone-handled blade. I, Alpha King Kale Blackwood, call upon the ancient rites to sever what the goddess joined. By blood and blade and broken vow, I reject this bond. I reject this female. I reject this mate. No, Kale, don't. He drew the blade across his palm. Blood dripped into the chalice, sizzling against whatever dark mixture waited there. The smell hit me like a physical blow. Wolfsbane, grave dirt, and something else. Something that made my wolf howl in terror. By the power of my bloodline, Kale continued, I cast out Serena of the White Moon. She is no longer Luna, no longer Pack, no longer mine. His eyes met mine, and I saw it then, the tiniest crack in his armor, a flash of agony quickly buried. May she wander the deadlands until her bones turn to dust. He appended the chalice. The liquid hit the ground between us, and the world exploded. Pain like I'd never imagined ripped through my chest. I felt the bond between us, that golden thread that had connected my soul to his since the moment we met, tear apart fiber by fiber. It wasn't clean. It wasn't quick. It was like having my heart pulled from my body through my spine. I screamed. Blood poured from my nose, my ears, the corners of my eyes. My body convulsed against the frozen earth. Somewhere far away, I heard gasping, and realized it was coming from Kale. The severance was hurting him too. Good, some dark part of me thought. Let him feel a fraction of what he's done. But mostly I just wanted to die. A rejected Luna's body turns on itself. I'd heard the stories but never believed them. Now I understood. My wolf was trying to claw her way out of my skin, maddened by the loss of her mate. My human heart was simply giving up, seeing no reason to keep beating. The cold seeped into my bones. The sky above me blurred, the stars smearing into streaks of light. The last thing I saw was Vanya's smile. I should have died in the Deadlands. That's what happens to rejected mates. The body fails. The wolf goes feral. You either freeze to death or lose yourself so completely that death becomes a mercy. But as the darkness closed in, something else reached for me. Silver light, soft as moonbeams, warm as summer despite the snow falling on my broken body. It wrapped around me like arms, like love, like the embrace of something far older than the mountains. Rise, daughter. The voice resonated in my bones, in my blood, in the place where my shattered bond still bled. I have waited centuries for you. I wanted to answer, to ask who was speaking, why they'd chosen me, what could possibly be left worth saving in a rejected, broken Luna. But unconsciousness claimed me before I could form the words. I woke to the smell of incense and night-blooming flowers. For a moment I just breathed, expecting the cold of the Deadlands, the agony of rejection, the certainty of death. Instead, I lay on something soft. Silk, maybe. The air felt warm and heavy, like summer in a garden. Slowly, I opened my eyes. I was in a temple. Not a ruined temple or a forgotten shrine. A living temple, with columns of white marble shot through with veins of silver, with pools of clear water reflecting light that had no source, with flowers blooming from vines that climbed toward a ceiling painted with phases of the moon. This place shouldn't exist. The Deadlands held nothing but death. I sat up carefully, waiting for the pain. It came, dull and distant, like an old wound finally healing. My white gown was gone, replaced by something simple and soft and pale gray. My wrists, which had blistered under the silver chains, showed only faint pink marks. You heal quickly for someone who was dying 6 hours ago. The voice came from everywhere. From nowhere, from inside my own head. I turned. A woman stood at the edge of the largest pool, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. She was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Not the sharp beauty of Vanya, but something softer, older, more terrible. Silver hair fell past her waist. Her gown seemed woven from starlight. And her eyes held actual moonlight, not a reflection. Not a trick of the strange luminescence filling this place. Her irises glowed with the soft silver radiance of a full moon, ancient and powerful and utterly inhuman. I knew those eyes from the temple paintings, from the prayers I'd whispered since childhood, from the stories my grandmother told me about the goddess who created werewolves from her own loneliness, who bound mates together because she couldn't bear for her children to be as alone as she'd been. You're not possible, I whispered. The moon goddess doesn't walk among mortals. She hasn't taken physical form in 1,000 years. Celine smiled, and the temperature in the temple dropped 10 degrees. I haven't had a reason to. She moved toward me with the grace of something that had never been human, each step leaving faint silver footprints on the marble floor. Until now. She stopped at the edge of my makeshift bed, looking down at me with those impossible eyes. Up close, I could see stars in them. Actual stars, burning in the silver depths like distant suns. Do you know what you are, Serena of the White Moon? She asked. Do you understand why I chose you as Kale Blackwood's mate? Why I've allowed you to survive a rejection that should have killed you? I shook my head, too overwhelmed to speak. The goddess knelt before me. Knelt, as if I were the one deserving of reverence, and took my face in her hands. Her touch burned with cold fire. You are not just a white wolf, daughter. Her voice resonated with power that made my bones vibrate. You are the last of my bloodline. The final descendant of the original Luna. The first werewolf queen. the woman I loved so much that I gave her a piece of my own soul. She leaned closer, moonlight eyes blazing. And Cale Blackwood just made the worst mistake of his immortal life by casting you aside. Wanting to see what would happen next? Subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 2. I stared at the moon goddess, certain I'd misheard her. Your bloodline? I repeated slowly. That's not possible. I'm nobody. My mother was a healer in a border pack. My father died in a rogue attack before I was born. There's no royal blood in me. No divine connection. I'm just a white wolf? Celine's smile held 1,000 years of patience. Child, do you know how rare white wolves are? 1 in 10,000 births, if that. And do you know why? I shook my head. Because white wolves carry my essence. A single drop of divine blood, diluted through countless generations, but present nonetheless. She released my face and rose, moving toward one of the reflecting pools. Most white wolves live ordinary lives. The divine spark sleeps within them, never awakening. But once every 1,000 years, a white wolf is born with enough of my blood to serve as a true vessel. She gestured, and the pool's surface rippled. Images formed in the water. A woman with silver hair and moonlight eyes, standing before a great wolf pack in an age when the world was younger. The first Luna, Celine said softly. Her name was Arya. She was human when I found her, dying alone on a battlefield after her village was destroyed by warring kings. I could have let her pass into death. Instead, I gave her a piece of my soul and created something new. Something that had never existed before. The image shifted. Arya transformed, her body becoming wolf and woman at once, silver light pouring from her skin. She became the mother of all werewolves. Every wolf who has ever lived carries a fragment of her essence, and through her, a fragment of mine. Celine's voice grew heavy with old grief. I loved her more than I have ever loved anything in my eternal existence. When she died, truly died, after 3,000 years, I thought I would never recover. The pool went dark, then lit again with new images. A bloodline traced through centuries, silver threads connecting generation to generation. But she left descendants, and in those descendants, my blood continues to flow. The image focused on a woman I recognized. My grandmother, young and fierce, with the same white fur I carried. Your grandmother knew what she was. She was supposed to tell you when you came of age. But she died before she could pass on the knowledge, and the truth died with her. My throat tightened. Grandmother had died when I was 15, taken by a wasting sickness that no healer could cure. I remembered her final days, how she clutched my hand and tried to speak, how the words wouldn't come no matter how hard she fought. She knew, I whispered. She was trying to tell me. She was. But fate is cruel sometimes, even to those I love. Celine turned to face me fully. You are the vessel, Serena, the one I've waited 1,000 years to claim. Born with enough divine blood to channel my full power. And when Cale Blackwood rejected you, he broke something, I finished. I felt it, not just the mate bond. Something deeper. Yes, the goddess's eyes gleamed. The mortal bond shattered. But in doing so, it cracked open the cage that kept your divine nature dormant, like a seed that must be broken for the flower to grow. She crossed back to me, and I noticed for the first time how the light in the temple bent toward her, how even the air seemed to hold its breath in her presence. You have a choice now, daughter. The divine blood in you is awakening, but it is not yet fully rooted. I can help you release it peacefully, let you drift into a gentle death and be reborn in another age, another body, with no memory of this pain. Her voice softened. You would be free of Cale, free of betrayal, free of the agony that awaits you if you choose to remain. For a moment, just a moment, I considered it. Peace, oblivion, an end to the ache in my chest where the mate bond had been, that raw wound that pulsed with every heartbeat. An end to the memory of Cale's cold eyes, of his hand raising the blade, of his voice condemning me for a crime I didn't commit. It would be so easy to let go. What's the other choice? I heard myself ask. Celine's smile turned sharp. You accept your full power. You become what you were born to be, the moon's wrath walking in mortal flesh. You return to the wolves who cast you out, and you show them exactly what they threw away. Revenge. Justice. Her correction was gentle but firm. There is a difference, daughter, though the line between them can be thin. Revenge is selfish. Justice serves a greater purpose. She waved her hand, and the reflecting pool filled with new images. I saw the Crescent Dominion as it had been 3 generations ago. A different alpha sat on the throne. Not a Blackwood, but a wolf with kind eyes and silver-streaked fur. His pack prospered under his rule. The weak were protected. The laws were fair. Then darkness crept in. A young wolf with golden eyes and ruthless ambition. Kale's grandfather, I realized. He stood in shadows, performing rituals that made my stomach turn. Blood magic, forbidden by every sacred law. He summoned things that should not be summoned. He made bargains that should never have been made. The rightful alpha died in his sleep. His heirs vanished, and Kale's grandfather took the throne. The Blackwood line stole their crown through dark magic, Celine said flatly. They murdered the true royal family and used blood rituals to bind the pack's loyalty. For 3 generations, they have ruled through power that was never meant to be theirs. Kale doesn't know, I said, though I wasn't sure why I was defending him. He would never. Wouldn't he? The pool shifted again, showing me Kale as a young man, training with his father, learning the old ways. And there, a ceremony I recognized from forbidden texts, a blood rite performed under a dark moon. Every Blackwood alpha renews the original spell when they take the throne. They must, or the binding breaks and the pack wakes from its loyalty. Celine's voice hardened. Kale performed the ritual on the night of his coronation. He knows exactly what his family did. He simply believes it was justified. The image changed again. I saw myself now, standing beside Kale at our mating ceremony. His hand in mine, his mark on my throat, the pack cheering as their new Luna was presented. Your divine blood would have undone everything, Celine continued. Had the mate bond fully matured, had you borne children together, your essence would have cleansed the dark magic from his line. Within a generation, the spell would have broken completely. So Vanya saw the threat you represented. She has her own ambitions, ones that require the dark magic to remain intact. The pool rippled, showing Vanya in chambers I recognized as the Queen Mother's private rooms. Watch carefully, daughter. This is the truth that was hidden from you. I leaned forward, my heart pounding. In the vision, Vanya sat with Kale's mother, serving tea with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She chatted about pack politics, about the upcoming harvest festival, about nothing of consequence. And when the Queen Mother looked away for just a moment, Vanya's hand moved. A vial appeared between her fingers. A few drops into the teacup, so quick I almost missed it. No, I breathed. She used a slow-acting poison derived from silver and nightshade. It took 6 hours to kill, mimicking a natural failure of the heart. Celine's voice held cold fury. And when she was done, she planted the evidence in your chambers. The herbs, the traces of your scent on the cup, all manufactured to frame you. But the witnesses, 3 pack members said they saw me alone with the Queen Mother that morning. The pool shifted again, showing me a face I knew well. Ronan, Kale's beta and closest friend. He stood with Vanya in a dark corner of the castle, their heads bent close together. I've done what you asked, Ronan said in the vision. The witnesses will say whatever you need them to say. But this had better be worth it, Vanya. If Kale ever finds out. He won't. Vanya's voice dripped with confidence. By the time anyone thinks to question the story, Serena will be dead in the Deadlands, and I'll be warming his bed again. Once I give him an heir, nothing else will matter. And my reward? Vanya smiled. A Luna of your own choosing from any pack in the realm. Kale will arrange it as a gift for your loyal service during his time of grief. The vision faded, leaving only dark water. Couldn't breathe. The betrayal I'd felt before was nothing compared to this. It wasn't just Kale who'd abandoned me. It wasn't just Vanya who'd schemed against me. Ronan had been there at our mating ceremony. He'd wished us joy. He'd called me sister. And the whole time he'd been planning my destruction. Why? The word came out broken. I never did anything to them. I never threatened anyone. I just wanted to be a good Luna. I just wanted to love my mate. That was your crime, Celine said softly. You were good, pure. And purity is poison to those who thrive in darkness. She knelt before me again, taking my hands in hers. So I ask you again, daughter, will you let them win? Will you fade into peaceful oblivion and leave their evil unpunished? Or will you rise? I thought of Kale's cold eyes as he rejected me. I thought of Vanya's smile as I lay bleeding. I thought of Ronan's false friendship, his lies, his casual willingness to destroy an innocent woman for personal gain. And I thought of the Queen Mother, who had been nothing but kind to me, who had welcomed me as a daughter, who had died in agony because of Vanya's ambition. The grief in my chest began to transform. It didn't disappear. I suspected it never would. But it changed, hardening into something sharper, stronger, more dangerous. What happens to Kale? I asked. If I accept this power, if I become your instrument, what happens to him? Celine studied me with ancient eyes. That depends on what he does next. The mate bond is severed, but something of it lingers. It always does, when the bond was true. He will suffer for what he's done. His wolf will punish him in ways I never could. A pause. Whether he deserves mercy or destruction will be revealed by his choices. And if he chooses wrong? Then you will end his line. The words should have horrified me. 3 days ago they would have. I loved Kale. Some part of me still loved him, in that deep place where the bond had lived. The thought of destroying him, of being the instrument of his downfall, felt like pressing on a wound. But he had condemned me to death without even letting me speak. He had chosen to believe lies over the truth of our bond. And because of his choice, I had nearly died alone in the Deadlands while my true murderers celebrated. Love didn't protect you from consequences. I accept. The words left my mouth, and the world held its breath. Celine's eyes blazed bright. You understand what this means? There is no going back. The power will change you. It will test you. It will show you darkness in yourself you never knew existed. I understand. You will feel everything more intensely. Every betrayal. Every wound. Every loss. But also every joy. Every victory. Every moment of justice served. I understand. And you will be mine. Her voice dropped low. My vessel. My voice. My wrath. For as long as you live, you will carry my purpose in your heart. I met her moonlit eyes without flinching. I was already carrying purpose in my heart. A mate, pack, a crown. They were taken from me. My voice hardened. Give me new ones. Celine smiled then, and it was a terrible, beautiful thing. Kneel, daughter. I slid from the bed and onto my knees on the cold marble floor. The reflecting pools around us began to glow, silver light rising from the water like mist. The flowers on the vines opened wide, releasing perfume that made my head spin. The goddess placed her hands on my head. By the blood of the first Luna, I claim you. Power flooded into me, not gentle, not gradual. A tidal wave of silver fire that burned through every vein, every nerve, every cell. I gasped but didn't scream. Some instinct told me that screaming would mean weakness, and I couldn't afford weakness anymore. By the light of every moon that has ever risen, I bless you. The fire reached my heart and exploded outward. I felt things breaking inside me. Old wounds, old fears, old limitations I hadn't even known I carried. They shattered like glass and were swept away in the flood of power. By my own immortal essence, I transform you. The power converged behind my eyes. Pressure built until I thought my skull would crack. I saw visions, Countless lives lived by vessels before me, their triumphs and failures, their choices and consequences. I felt the weight of 1,000 years of divine purpose settling onto my shoulders. You are no longer Serena of the white moon. My vision went white. You are no longer a Luna, rejected and broken. The white turned to silver. Rise, daughter. I rose. My body felt different. Stronger, lighter, humming with energy that seemed to have no end. The aches from my rejection were gone. The weakness that had made me easy prey had burned away. I looked down at my hands and found them glowing faintly with inner light. Look into the pool, Celine commanded. See what you have become. I walked to the nearest reflecting pool and gazed at my reflection. The stranger looked back. My hair had turned pure silver, cascading past my shoulders like moonlight made solid. My skin held an luminous quality, as if lit from within. My body was the same but somehow more defined, more powerful, more present. But it was my eyes that stopped my breath. They burned molten silver, bright as the full moon at its peak, ancient and terrible and beautiful. Not the soft glow of Celine's eyes, but something fiercer, hotter, the eyes of a goddess's wrath given physical form. What am I? I whispered. Celine appeared beside my reflection, her expression filled with pride and sorrow in equal measure. You are the moon's wrath, the divine instrument of justice, the nightmare of every wolf who has broken sacred law and believed themselves safe from consequence. She placed a hand on my shoulder, and I felt the connection between us. A bond far deeper than anything I'd shared with Kale. This wasn't the bond of mates. This was the bond of goddess and vessel, of purpose and instrument, of ancient power and mortal flesh. The wolves of Crescent Dominion believe you dead, Celine continued. They believe their crimes hidden, their futures secure. They have no idea what is coming for them. I smiled, and my reflection smiled back with silver fire in its eyes. Good. Miles away, in the grand chambers of Crescent Dominion, Alpha King Kale Blackwood woke screaming. He'd been dreaming of Serena again. The same dream that had haunted him since the banishment 3 nights ago. She stood at the edge of a cliff, white gown stained with blood, silver eyes, when had her eyes turned silver, boring into his soul. You threw me away, she said in the dream. Now watch me burn everything you love. Then she stepped off the cliff, and he lunged to catch her. Always too late, always reaching for empty air. Fenris howled inside his mind. His wolf had been howling for 3 days, non-stop. A constant keening sound that made it impossible to think, to sleep, to function. Every time Kale tried to silence him, Fenris clawed at the walls of his consciousness with renewed fury. Mate, his wolf snarled. Our mate, what have you done? What have you done? She killed my mother. Kale said the words out loud, as he'd been saying them constantly since the banishment. A mantra, a justification. She was guilty. The evidence. Lies. Fenris slammed against his mental walls so hard that Kale's vision blurred. His wolf had never been like this. They'd always worked in perfect harmony, human and beast united in purpose. Now it felt like sharing his body with a rabid animal. Our mate was innocent. We felt her truth. We ignored it. We let the snake woman poison our mind. And now our mate is dead, dead, dead. She's not dead. But even as Kale said it, he wasn't sure. 3 days in the Deadlands with no pack, no shelter, no protection from the things that hunted there. The chances of survival were essentially zero, especially for a rejected Luna whose own body would be destroying itself. He stumbled out of bed and crossed to the window. Dawn was breaking over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. It should have been beautiful. Instead, all Kale could see was Serena's face as she begged him to listen. Please, just let me explain. He'd ignored her, hadn't even considered the possibility that she might be telling the truth. His mother was dead. The evidence pointed to Serena, and Vanya had been so convincing, so sympathetic, so certain. Vanya. Something cold slithered through his gut. He'd known Vanya for years. She'd been his companion before the mate bond pulled him to Serena. She was ambitious, yes. Ruthless, certainly. But a murderer? A conspirator? The snake knows the truth, Fenris growled. She put the poison in our mother's cup. She planted the evidence. She destroyed our mate to clear her path back to our bed. You don't know that. I know. The certainty in his wolf's voice shook him. Fenris had never lied to him, had never steered him wrong. The bond between human and wolf was sacred, unbreakable, built on absolute trust. And yet Kale had chosen to ignore Fenris's warnings about Serena. His wolf had been screaming her innocence from the moment she was accused. Kale had silenced him, too consumed by grief to listen. What if he'd made a mistake? What if he'd condemned his true mate to death for a crime she didn't commit? The thought was too horrible to contemplate, so he did what he'd been doing for 3 days. Pushed it down, buried it deep, and tried to convince himself that he'd done the right thing. But as he turned from the window, he caught his reflection in the glass. His eyes, usually a clear gold, were threaded with black veins. And deep in his mind, Fenris began to laugh. A terrible, broken sound that held no humor at all. The bond breaking is poisoning you, his wolf said. Rejecting a true mate destroys both halves of the pair. You just killed us both, you fool. And we deserved it. Kale pressed his palms against the cold glass and tried very hard not to scream again. In the temple that shouldn't exist, I felt a distant echo of pain. A shadow of what had once been my connection to Kale. Pulsed once, twice, then faded. He's suffering, Celine observed. His wolf is punishing him. Good. The word came out flat, hard. Nothing like the woman I'd been 3 days ago. He deserves worse. Perhaps. The goddess studied me with knowing eyes. But be careful, daughter. The line between justice and cruelty is thinner than you might think. I've seen many instruments lose themselves to vengeance, become the very monsters they set out to destroy. I won't. That's what they all said. But Celine smiled anyway, and touched my cheek with something like affection. You're stronger than most. I have faith. I turned from the pool, my silver eyes catching the light. Somewhere out there, Vanya was celebrating. Ronan was counting his rewards. And Kale was pretending he hadn't just destroyed the one person who could have saved him. They had no idea what was coming. I was no longer just a Luna. No longer just a white wolf or a rejected mate or a convenient scapegoat. I was something new, something ancient, something that would make them all pay for what they'd done. I was the moon's wrath walking in mortal flesh. And I had work to do. Chapter 3. 3 months changed everything. I barely recognized myself anymore. The woman who had knelt before an alpha king, who had trembled at harsh words, who had believed love would be enough. She was gone. Burned away in the silver fire of transformation. Replaced by something harder, colder, more dangerous. I traveled the 5 kingdoms under the name Lyra, a wandering healer with no pack affiliation. It was a common enough story. Rogues and lone wolves roamed the territories between kingdoms, surviving on odd jobs and the charity of border packs. No one looked twice at a female traveling alone, especially one who kept her hood up and her eyes down. The silver in my hair I explained away as premature graying, a family trait. The power that hummed beneath my skin I kept carefully contained, revealing nothing of what I truly was. Celine had warned me that patience would be my greatest weapon. The goddess had waited 1,000 years for this moment. A few months of preparation meant nothing against that scale. But patience grew harder with each kingdom I passed through. The Crescent Dominion was dying. I'd heard whispers of it in the outer territories. Farmers complaining of withered crops, traders speaking of barren she-wolves, travelers warning of a wasting sickness that swept through pack after pack. I'd assumed the stories were exaggerated, the way stories always grew in the telling. They weren't. The first village I entered inside Kale's borders told the truth with brutal clarity. Fields that should have been golden with autumn harvest stood brown and dead. The grain had rotted in the ground before it could mature. The fruit trees bore nothing but shriveled lumps that fell apart at a touch. The people were worse. I saw wolves who should have been strong and vital shuffling through the streets like the elderly. children with hollow cheeks and sunken eyes, pregnant women weeping because they'd miscarried for the third time, the fourth time, the fifth. The healers worked constantly, but nothing helped. Herbs that should have cured brought no relief. Prayers to the moon goddess went unanswered. Of course they did. The goddess had withdrawn her blessing from these lands. Every wolf born under the Blackwood banner suffered the consequences of their alpha's sins, whether they knew those sins existed or not. It wasn't fair. The farmers hadn't stolen the throne through blood magic. The children hadn't condemned an innocent Luna to death. The pregnant women hadn't schemed with Vanya or lied with Ronan. But they belonged to Kale, and Kale had broken sacred law. So they all paid the price. I wanted to hate them. It would have been easier if I could see them as complicit, as deserving of their suffering. Instead, I saw frightened people trying to understand why their world was falling apart. The goddess has abandoned us, an old woman whispered to me in the second village, pressing herbs into my hands as payment for healing her grandson's fever. We must have done something terrible, but no one knows what. The priests pray day and night. The Alpha King has ordered sacrifices and rituals. Nothing works. I wanted to tell her the truth. I wanted to scream it in the streets. Let everyone know that their beloved king had murdered the true royal line, had used blood magic to steal their loyalty, had rejected and nearly killed his innocent mate. But Celine's voice echoed in my mind. Patience, daughter. Justice too hastily served often misses its target. So I kept my secrets and moved on. The attack came in the third month, on the border between the Crescent Dominion and the Shadowfang territory. I'd stopped to camp in a small clearing, far enough from any pack that I wouldn't be noticed. The night was cold, winter breathing down from the mountains, and I'd built a small fire more for comfort than warmth. The divine blood in my veins kept me from feeling temperature the way I once had. The scream shattered the silence just after midnight. I was moving before I fully registered what I'd heard. A girl's voice, high and terrified, coming from the ravine to the east. My feet barely touched the ground as I ran, power surging through my limbs, making me faster than any natural wolf. I found them in a hollow between two hills. 5 rogues, males with the wild eyes and matted fur of wolves who'd abandoned pack life entirely. They circled a small figure huddled against a rock face. A girl, maybe 14 or 15, with the slight build and submissive posture of an omega. One of the rogues had already torn her dress. Another was laughing. Nowhere to run, little wolf. His voice was a growl, more beast than man. Your pack is miles away. No one to hear you scream. The girl sobbed. Please, please don't. We'll be gentle. The third rogue lied. At first, I stepped into the hollow. 5 heads turned. 5 pairs of yellow eyes fixed on me, calculating threat level, dismissing what they saw. A lone female, slender and cloaked, with no visible weapons. Easy prey, their expressions said. 2 for the price of 1. Walk away. My voice came out calm, cold. Leave the girl and I'll let you live. The lead rogue laughed. You'll let us live? Little wolf, do you have any idea? Kneel. The word left my mouth carrying divine authority. It wasn't a request or a command. It was a fundamental truth, a law of nature that could not be disobeyed. The power of the moon goddess resonated through every syllable, reaching into the rogues' very souls. They dropped. All 5 of them, slamming into the frozen ground like puppets with cut strings. Their faces contorted with shock and fear as their bodies refused to obey their own commands. They struggled, muscles straining, but the divine compulsion held them fast. What? The lead rogue gasped. What are you? I walked past them without answering, moving to the girl. She stared at me with huge eyes, trembling so hard her teeth chattered. You're safe now. I gentled my voice, remembering how to be soft. Felt strange after months of hardness. They won't hurt you. How did you do that? She whispered. No one can make alphas kneel, not even the king. And those rogues, they were alphas once, all of them. I felt their dominance. They should have crushed you. I helped her to her feet, wrapping my cloak around her torn dress. What's your name, little one? Dessa. From the Pinewood Pack. Her eyes went to the 5 men still kneeling behind us, unable to rise. Please, what are you? I considered lying. Considered giving her some plausible explanation that would let me fade back into anonymity. But she was Omega, the lowest rank in any pack, the most vulnerable, the most frequently abused. I remembered being Omega before my wolf manifested white. I remembered how it felt to be powerless, to know that any wolf with higher rank could hurt you and no one would care. I'm Justice, I told her quietly, the kind that doesn't look away from Omegas. Her eyes filled with tears. Not fear this time, something closer to hope. The stories are true, she breathed. The silver wolf, the one who walks alone and makes alphas bow. I thought it was just a legend. I went still. What stories? Everyone's talking about her. A she-wolf with silver hair who appears out of nowhere, saves the weak, and vanishes before anyone can learn her name. Some say she's a ghost. Others say she's the moon goddess herself, walking among us to judge the wicked. Dessa clutched my cloak tighter. Is it you? Are you her? The stories had spread. Despite my care, despite my caution, word of my interventions had traveled. Too many villages where I'd healed the sick. Too many roads where I'd stopped bandits. Too many moments where my power had slipped its leash and revealed something extraordinary. I should have been more careful. Should have let some of the victims suffer rather than risk exposure. But I couldn't. That was the fundamental truth I'd discovered in these 3 months of wandering. I couldn't watch innocent people hurt and do nothing. Even when revealing myself put my larger mission at risk. Even when patience demanded I look away. Maybe that was weakness. Or maybe it was the last shred of the woman I'd been before the silver fire transformed me. Take my cloak, I told Dessa, avoiding her question. Your pack is 3 miles north. Can you make it? Yes, but... Go. Now. Before more rogues come. She hesitated, clearly wanting to say more, to ask more questions. But Omega instinct won out. Obedience to a clear command from a dominant wolf. She pulled my cloak tight and ran. I turned back to the 5 rogues. They were still kneeling, still struggling uselessly against divine compulsion. Fear had replaced arrogance in their eyes. They knew, on some primal level, that they were facing something beyond their understanding. Please, the leader's voice cracked. Please, we didn't know. We didn't realize she was under your protection. We'll leave. We'll never touch another Omega. Just let us go. I considered them. Rogues who had chosen to abandon pack law. Males who had tried to violate a child. Predators who would keep hunting until someone stopped them permanently. Celine's voice whispered in my mind. Justice, daughter. Not cruelty. You will leave the 5 kingdoms, I said, letting the divine authority fill my words. You will travel east until you reach the ocean. You will never return. You will never touch an unwilling wolf again. This command will live in your blood until the day you die. The compulsion settled into them like chains sinking into flesh. I saw it take root, saw their eyes widen as they realized the command was permanent. They would have no choice but to obey. Not because they wanted to, but because my power had made obedience as fundamental as breathing. Go! They fled. I watched them disappear into the darkness. 5 broken predators who would spend the rest of their lives walking toward an ocean they would never be allowed to leave. It wasn't death, but it might have been worse. The news reached me 2 weeks later, in a border town where I'd stopped to gather information. The Alpha King was searching for the silver wolf. Not to punish her, to beg for her help. The sickness spreading through his kingdom had grown worse. Entire villages had been abandoned. The she-wolves who could still carry children were too weak to survive childbirth. His own healers had admitted defeat. Someone had told him about the mysterious wolf who healed the sick and made alphas kneel. Someone had suggested that if anyone could save the Crescent Dominion, it was her. The irony nearly made me laugh. Kale was hunting for me. Not the Serena he'd thrown away, but the power that had risen from her ashes. He wanted my help. He wanted me to save the kingdom he'd destroyed. Part of me wanted to let it all burn. Let every field rot. Every wolf sicken, every child wither. Let Kale watch his precious dominion crumble while knowing it was his own fault. But then I thought of the old woman who'd pressed herbs into my hands. The children with hollow cheeks. The pregnant women weeping over lost babies. They didn't deserve to suffer for his sins. Even if he did. I was still wrestling with this impossible choice when I arrived at the town of Millbrook, 3 days from the capital. The sickness was worse here. I saw it in the gray pallor of every face, the shuffling gait of wolves who should have been vital. The healer's cottage had a line stretching down the street. The cemetery had fresh graves, too many to count. I kept my head down and made for the inn. I needed time to think, to plan, to decide whether mercy was worth the risk of exposure. But fate, it seemed, had other ideas. The girl was crouched behind the stables, hidden in shadow. I almost missed her entirely. But something made me look. Some whisper of intuition. Some divine nudge I couldn't ignore. She was young, maybe 16, with dark hair and a painfully thin frame. Her dress was little more than rags. Fresh bruises marked her cheekbones, her arms, the visible curve of her shoulder. She was eating garbage from the refuse heap, shoving rotten vegetables into her mouth with the desperation of someone who hadn't had a real meal in weeks. I stopped, stared. Something about her face tugged at my memory. Then she looked up, and my heart stopped. Mira, my sister's eyes, our mother's eyes, deep brown and long-lashed, went wide with terror. She scrambled backward, pressing against the stable wall, raising her hands as if to ward off a blow. Please don't tell her. Please. I'll go back. I'll accept whatever punishment. Just please don't tell Mistress Vanya that I stole food. Mistress Vanya. The words hit me like a physical blow. My baby sister. The girl I'd raised after our mother died. The sweet, quiet Omega who used to pick wildflowers and dream of finding her mate, was serving Vanya. Beaten, starved, terrified. Because of me. Mira. I kept my voice soft, fighting to contain the rage building in my chest. Mira, it's me. It's Serena. She laughed, and it was a terrible sound, hollow, broken, edged with hysteria. Serena is dead. Everyone knows that. She died in the Deadlands 3 months ago. And good riddance, that's what Mistress Vanya says. A poisoner and a traitor who got what she deserved. I'm not dead. I pushed back my hood, letting her see my silver-streaked hair, my changed features. I survived. I was transformed. But I'm still your sister, Mira. I'm still Serena. She stared at me. For a long moment, nothing registered. The fear and exhaustion had dulled her mind, made recognition difficult. Then something flickered in her eyes, a memory surfacing through layers of trauma. Rena, her childhood name for me, the one she'd used before she could pronounce Serena properly. But, your eyes, they're silver. That's not possible. A lot of impossible things have happened since Kale threw me out. I moved slowly, carefully, the way I'd once approached wounded animals. Come away from there. Come with me. I'll get you food, real food, and somewhere safe to sleep. I can't. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. If I don't go back, Vanya will hunt me down. She only let me leave the castle to gather herbs for her pregnancy tea. If I'm not back by sundown, her pregnancy tea. The words came out flat. Vanya is pregnant. 3 months along. The heir to the Crescent Dominion. Myra's voice carried a bone-deep bitterness I'd never heard from her before. She reminds me every day. Tells me that her son will rule while my sister's bones rot in the Deadlands. Tells me I should be grateful she lets me live at all, since traitor's blood runs in my veins. Red clouded my vision. The power surged inside me, straining against my control, demanding release. I wanted to march into the castle right now. I wanted to find Vanya and show her exactly what traitor's blood could do. But that wasn't the plan. That wasn't patient. That wasn't justice. It was vengeance, pure and simple. Tell me everything, I said instead, forcing calm into my voice. Tell me what's happened since I was banished. We sat behind the stables as the sun sank toward the horizon, and Mira told me. The kingdom had started failing within a week of my banishment. crops withering, animals dying, she-wolves miscarrying. At first, the healers blamed natural causes, a hard winter, bad luck, some unknown disease. But as the weeks passed and nothing improved, panic had set in. Kale had ordered prayers, rituals, sacrifices to the moon goddess. Nothing worked. The priests said the goddess had turned her face away from the Crescent Dominion, but no one could explain why. Meanwhile, Vanya had secured her position. Within a month of my death, she'd moved back into the castle as Kale's companion. Within 2, she'd announced her pregnancy. The pack had celebrated, finally, some good news amid the disaster. An heir meant stability. An heir meant hope. But the heir hadn't stopped the dying. If anything, the sickness had accelerated since Vanya's announcement. Entire regions had gone dark. Pack members who could flee had fled, seeking sanctuary in neighboring kingdoms. Those who couldn't suffered. And me? I asked quietly. How did you end up serving her? Myra's face crumpled. After you were banished, Kale declared our family traitors. Our pack was ordered to shun us. Mother's grave was desecrated. I tried to run, but Vanya's guards caught me at the border. She swallowed hard. She said keeping me as a servant was mercy, a chance to redeem our family's honor through service. But really, she just wanted someone to hurt, someone connected to you. I closed my eyes, drew a slow breath, let the rage settle into something cold and patient. 3 months of suffering, 3 months of abuse, 3 months of my baby sister being tortured because Vanya needed a target for her cruelty. You're not going back, I said. I have to. She'll do nothing, because she's never going to touch you again. I opened my eyes, and Mira flinched at whatever she saw there. I'm going to take you somewhere safe. Then I'm going to deal with Vanya. Serena, you can't. She has the whole pack behind her. She has Kale. Kale threw me away. Whatever power he had over me died in the Deadlands. I stood, holding out my hand. Come with me, Mira. Trust me one more time. I swear on our mother's memory that I will never let anyone hurt you again. She stared at my hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out and took it. I found shelter for Mira in a village just outside Shadowfang territory, with a kind older couple who asked no questions and accepted my payment in gold. She was safe there, hidden from Vanya's reach, with enough food and warmth to start recovering from her ordeal. But I couldn't stay with her. The search for the Silver Wolf was intensifying. Kale had sent parties into every corner of his kingdom, desperate to find the mysterious healer who might save his people. If I remained in one place too long, they would find me. And I wasn't ready for that confrontation. Not yet. So I made Mira promise to stay hidden, and I slipped back into the Crescent Dominion like a ghost, moving from shadow to shadow, healing where I could without revealing too much. Watching, waiting. I told myself I was gathering intelligence, learning the patterns of Kale's search parties, the layout of his defenses, the weaknesses in his rule. But really I was delaying, because I still didn't know what I would do when I finally faced him. The choice Celine had offered me seemed so simple in the goddess's temple. Accept the power. Become the instrument of justice. Make them all pay. But justice was complicated. The innocent were tangled up with the guilty. Mira had suffered while Vanya prospered, but so had thousands of others who'd never done anything wrong. How did you punish the wicked without destroying those they'd trapped in their web? I was camped in a dense forest 2 days from the capital, wrestling with these questions, when the search party found me. I heard them coming long before they arrived. The crack of branches, the murmur of voices, the heavy footfalls of wolves in human form. A dozen of them, maybe more, moving through the trees with the coordinated precision of military training. Kale's elite guard, the best trackers in the kingdom. I could have run. Could have called on my power to vanish into the shadows, to slip away before they reached my camp. That would have been the smart play, the patient play. Instead, I stayed. Maybe I was tired of running. Maybe I wanted this confrontation more than I'd admitted to myself. Or maybe some part of me, That stupid, stubborn part that still remembered loving Cale Blackwood. Needed to see his face one more time. The guards entered the clearing in formation, fanning out to surround me. I remained seated by my fire, hood up, face shadowed. Identify yourself, the lead guard commanded. By order of Alpha King Cale, all lone wolves must submit to questioning. I said nothing. The guards shifted uneasily. They could sense something wrong, even if they couldn't identify what. The power humming beneath my skin. The divine authority that made their wolves want to bow. I said, identify yourself. The lead guard's hand went to his sword. This is your final warning. Stand down, Marcus. The voice came from behind the guards. Deep, commanding, achingly familiar. The formation parted. Cale Blackwood walked into the firelight. He looked terrible. 3 months of his kingdom dying had carved lines into his face that hadn't been there before. His golden eyes, once bright with arrogance and certainty, were shadowed with exhaustion and guilt. He'd lost weight, the powerful frame I remembered had gone gaunt, almost haggard. But it was his presence that struck me most. The dominant alpha energy that had once made entire packs kneel felt diminished, cracked, like a foundation slowly crumbling from within. You've led us a long chase, he said, stepping closer to my fire. The silver wolf, the ghost healer, the one who makes alphas bow. His eyes, searching, swept over my hooded form. I don't want to fight you. I want to bargain. My kingdom is dying. My people are suffering. If you have power that can save them, name your price. Anything. I'll give you anything. I stood slowly. The guards tensed. Cale raised a hand, keeping them back. I've heard your kingdom's troubles, I said, keeping my voice low and even. Unrecognizable. I've walked your roads, seen your dying fields, your sick children, your barren women. Then you know I'm desperate. He took another step toward me, close enough that I could smell him now. That familiar scent of pine and winter wind that had once meant safety, meant home. I've tried everything. Prayers, rituals, every healer in the realm. Nothing works. The goddess has abandoned us, and I don't know why. The irony was almost too much to bear. Perhaps, I said softly, you should ask what you did to earn her wrath. Something flickered in his expression. A crack in the desperate facade. I've made mistakes. I know that. He stopped, swallowed hard. I've done things I can't take back. But my people shouldn't suffer for my sins. Whatever punishment the goddess wants, let her take it out on me, not them. It was almost the right answer. Almost humble enough, almost self-aware enough. If I didn't know what he'd done, what he was still hiding, what dark magic bound his pack's loyalty, I might have believed him. I reached up and pushed back my hood. The firelight caught my silver hair, illuminated my pale skin, revealed the face that had changed so much and yet, somehow, not enough. Cale went absolutely still. I watched recognition dawn in his eyes, watched shock replace desperation, watched his face go white as bone. No, the word came out strangled. No, that's not possible. You're dead. I watched you. I felt you. Die. I smiled, and it felt like a knife. Almost. The deadlands almost killed me. The rejection almost destroyed my body. But something else saved me. Something you never counted on. I let the power rise. Silver light bloomed from my skin, gentle at first, then brighter, brighter, until I blazed like the full moon given human form. My eyes burned molten silver, ancient and terrible. The divine essence of the moon goddess radiated from every pore. The guards dropped to their knees. They had no choice. The compulsion was automatic, instinctive, hardwired into every wolf's soul. In the presence of true divine authority, they could only submit. But Cale didn't kneel. He staggered, gasping as if he'd been stabbed. His hand flew to his chest, clawing at the fabric over his heart. A sound tore from his throat. Half scream, half howl, pure agony. And I felt it. The mate bond. The bond he'd torn apart 3 months ago. That he'd severed with blood and blade and broken vows. It screamed back to life between us. Not the gentle golden thread it had been before. This was something else. Something savage. A wound that had never properly healed, ripped open and bleeding fresh. Serena. He gasped my name like a drowning man gasping for air. Serena, Serena, Serena. I stumbled back, unprepared for the force of it. 3 months of hardening myself, of burning away the love I'd felt, of becoming cold and patient and untouchable. And in one moment, one surge of the bond one thought destroyed, it all threatened to crumble. No, I fought for control. He rejected me. He threw me away. He believed lies over truth and condemned me to death. But the bond didn't care about logic. It only knew that its other half was here, was close, was reaching out with desperate need. Cale fell to his knees. Not from divine compulsion like his guards. He knelt because his legs wouldn't hold him, because the resurrected bond was tearing him apart from the inside. You're alive. Tears streamed down his face. Tears, from the Alpha King who never showed weakness. You're alive. I felt you die. I felt the bond go dark. I've been dying for 3 months, but you're alive. I looked down at the man who'd destroyed me, the man I'd loved more than my own life, the man I'd come to destroy, and for the first time since accepting Celine's power, I had no idea what to do next. Chapter 4. The clearing had gone silent. Cale's elite guards remained frozen on their knees, unable to rise against the divine compulsion that held them. Their Alpha King knelt before me, tears streaming down his face, his whole body shaking with the force of the resurrected bond. And I stood above them all, burning with silver light, feeling the connection I'd thought destroyed pulsing between us like an open wound. I forced myself to breathe, to think, to remember why I was here. He rejected you. He threw you away. He believed lies over the truth of your bond. The mantra helped. The rage beneath the pain helped more. Get up. My voice came out cold, stripped of any warmth I might have once felt for this man. An Alpha King shouldn't grovel. Cale struggled to his feet, still clutching his chest where the bond burned. His eyes, those golden eyes that had once looked at me with such love, searched my face desperately. You're her. His voice cracked. My wolf knows. Fenris is going insane. He's screaming your name, clawing at my mind. But your face. How is this possible? I let the silver light fade, though traces of it still flickered beneath my skin. Transformation changes many things. The goddess remade me when you threw me away to die. The goddess. He staggered, nearly falling again. You met the moon goddess? Met her. Was chosen by her. Became her vessel. I smiled, and it held no kindness. Everything you destroyed, she rebuilt. Stronger, harder, less inclined toward mercy. One of the guards made a small sound, fear or awe, I couldn't tell. Cale didn't seem to notice. His entire being was focused on me with an intensity that might have been flattering once. Now it just felt like pressure. Serena. He said my name like a prayer. Serena, please. Let me explain. Let me. There is nothing to explain. I cut him off with a gesture, and the divine authority in my voice made him flinch. You made your choice 3 months ago. You chose to believe lies. You chose to reject your true mate. You chose to condemn an innocent woman to death in the Deadlands. I paused, letting each word land like a blow. Those choices have consequences. I know. The admission came out ragged. I've been living with those consequences. Fenris hasn't stopped howling since the night He couldn't finish the sentence. My kingdom is dying. My people are suffering. I thought it was a curse, but it's punishment, isn't it? The goddess withdrawing her blessing. Finally, something penetrates that thick skull of yours. Cale's jaw tightened at the insult, but he didn't rise to it. The man I'd known would have bristled at such disrespect. This hollow version of him simply absorbed it. Tell me how to fix it. His voice dropped low, urgent. Tell me what penance the goddess requires. I'll do anything. Give anything. My life if that's what it takes. Your life. I laughed. and the sound was bitter. Do you think your death would satisfy divine justice? You'd escape into oblivion while your people continued to suffer? That's not penance, Kale. That's cowardice. He flinched as if I'd struck him. Good. There is one path forward, I said after a long moment. One chance to prove your worthiness or lack thereof. The Moonfire Judgment. The guards stirred uneasily. Even from their frozen positions, I saw recognition dawn on their faces. Fear followed quickly. The Moonfire Judgment was outlawed centuries ago, Kale said slowly. The flames killed too many. The flames killed the guilty, I corrected. That was rather the point. But you're right that the ritual was abandoned. Wolves grew too afraid of true accountability. I tilted my head, studying him. Are you afraid, Alpha King? Do you have reason to be? Something flickered in his expression. Not guilt, he still believed himself righteous, I could see that clearly. But uncertainty. A crack in the foundation of his certainty. I did what I believed was right, he said. My mother was murdered. The evidence pointed to one person. I acted to protect my pack from. Then you have nothing to fear from the flames. I stepped closer, and he held his ground, though I saw his wolf straining in his eyes. The moonfire burns only the guilty. If you truly believed Serena poisoned your mother, if your heart holds no conscious deception, you'll walk through unscathed. And if I pass? Then I'll heal your kingdom. I'll restore the goddess's blessing. I'll even... The words stuck in my throat, but I forced them out. I'll even consider that your sins were those of ignorance rather than malice. Kale studied me for a long moment. I could feel Fenris raging beneath his surface, the wolf desperate to reach me, to force Kale to acknowledge what his human mind still couldn't fully accept. And if I fail? Then your rule ends. The Blackwood line pays for 3 generations of blood magic and stolen power. I let the truth of what I knew shine in my eyes. Yes, Kale. I know everything. The goddess showed me what your grandfather did, what your father did, what you did on the night of your coronation. Every dark ritual, every broken law, every innocent who died so your family could keep a throne that was never rightfully theirs. The blood drained from his face. How? Did you think divine power comes with limitations? The moon goddess sees all that happens under her light. Every secret spoken in shadow. Every sin committed thinking no one would know. I turned away from him, addressing the guards. Rise. You will witness what comes next and carry word to every corner of the kingdom. The compulsion released them. They scrambled to their feet, several of them backing away from me with naked terror in their eyes. The ritual takes place at the Temple of the 3 Moons, I continued. Midnight tomorrow. Every pack member who can travel will attend. This judgment will not happen in secret. The temple is 3 days' journey. One of the guards protested weakly. Then you'd better start moving. I turned back to Kale. I'll meet you there. And Kale? If you even think about running, I'll find you. There is nowhere in any realm where you could hide from me now. I stepped backward into shadow, calling on the goddess's power to carry me away. The last thing I saw was Kale's face. Devastated, desperate, and finally beginning to understand the magnitude of what he'd done. The Temple of the 3 Moons had stood abandoned for centuries. Once, it had been the holiest site in the 5 kingdoms, a place where wolves came to receive the goddess's blessing, to perform sacred ceremonies, to seek judgment when pack law proved insufficient. Its 3 towers had been crowned with silver that caught the moonlight and reflected it across the valley like a beacon. Now the silver was tarnished. The towers crumbled. The sacred flames that had once burned eternal had long since died. But as I approached the temple, I felt them stir. Deep within the ruins, in a chamber carved into the living rock, the moonfire still waited. It had never truly gone out, only slumbered, waiting for someone with the authority to wake it. I descended into the heart of the temple as dawn broke over the mountains. The passage was dark, the stairs worn smooth by countless feet over countless years. At the bottom, I found a circular chamber with a pit at its center, filled with what looked like ordinary ash. I knelt beside the pit and pressed my palm to the cold stone. Wake, I commanded. Your goddess has need of you. The ash stirred. Silver sparks flickered in its depths. And slowly, impossibly, fire rose from nothing. Flames that burned without fuel, that cast light without heat, that held colors no natural fire could claim. The moonfire had awakened. I spent the remaining hours preparing the ritual space, clearing debris and restoring what I could of the ancient wards. By nightfall, the temple had come alive again. Silver light pulsed through channels carved in the walls. The air hummed with power waiting to be unleashed. When midnight came, I was ready. But I wasn't prepared for how many would answer the call. They came in waves, pack members from across the Crescent Dominion, traveling through the night despite the danger. Many were sick with the wasting disease. Some could barely walk. But they came anyway, drawn by rumors of a silver wolf who might save them, by desperate hope that the dying could be reversed. They filled the temple's courtyard. Spilling down the hillside, thousands of wolves gathered to witness judgment. Kale arrived with the final wave, his elite guards flanking him like a protective wall. He changed from his travel-worn clothes into formal armor, the ceremonial plates of an Alpha King, inscribed with the Blackwood crest. I stood at the entrance to the underground chamber, my silver hair unbound, my plain gray dress a stark contrast to his finery. Power radiated from me in waves that made even the strongest alphas lower their eyes. You came, I said. Did you doubt I would? No. Your arrogance wouldn't allow you to refuse a challenge. Even one you can't win. His jaw tightened. I have nothing to hide. My only crime was trusting the wrong people. Then the flames will prove it. I turned to address the crowd, letting my voice carry on divine authority until it reached every ear. Wolves of the Crescent Dominion, you have come seeking salvation from the sickness that plagues your lands. I am the moon's vessel, and I offer you truth. Tonight, your Alpha King will submit to the moonfire judgment. The flames will reveal whether he is worthy of the goddess's blessing, or whether his sins have earned her wrath. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Fear, hope, confusion. Most had never seen a moonfire judgment. None of them fully understood what was about to happen. That was about to change. Follow me. I descended into the chamber and they followed. Kale first, then his guards, then as many pack members as could fit into the space. The rest remained above, but I wove a thread of power that would let them see everything, projecting the events below onto the surface of every pool, every reflective surface, every moonlit patch of sky. The whole kingdom would witness this. The moonfire blazed in its pit, silver and white and colors that had no name, cast no shadows, made no sound, but everyone who looked at it felt its presence. Ancient, patient, utterly merciless. The rules are simple, I said, my voice echoing off the stone walls. The accused walks through the flames. If he is innocent, if his heart holds no guilty knowledge of the crimes in question, he will pass unharmed. If he is guilty, the fire will consume him. And if he's guilty of some things but innocent of others? One of the guards had found enough courage to ask. The flames are more subtle than that. I turned to Kale. You will walk through unharmed if you truly believed Serena was guilty. If you had no part in the conspiracy against her. If your rejection was honest, however misguided. Something in his posture relaxed slightly. He still believed himself righteous. Still thought his only crime was being deceived. We would see. Proceed, Alpha King. Kale straightened his shoulders and stepped toward the flames. He paused at the edge of the pit, the fire licking upward toward him like a living thing tasting the air. I saw him swallow hard, saw the moment of doubt flicker across his face. Then he stepped into the moonfire. The flames swallowed him whole. For a heartbeat, 2 heartbeats. I couldn't see anything but silver-white light blazing so bright it hurt to look at. Then he emerged from the other side, untouched, unburned. His armor didn't even show scorch marks. The crowd released a collective breath. Relief rippled through the assembly. Their king was innocent. Whatever had caused the goddess's wrath, it wasn't. We're not finished. My voice cut through the relief like a blade. Kale turned, triumph beginning to dawn on his face. The flames tested your guilt, I continued. But guilt is a limited thing. A man can commit atrocities and feel no guilt, as long as he believes himself justified. I raised my hand, and the moonfire roared higher. Now the flames will show truth. Not what you believed, but what actually happened. That wasn't part of the agreement. You agreed to a judgment. Truth is the foundation of all judgment. I closed my eyes and reached into the fire with my power, with the goddess's ancient authority. Moonfire, I command you. Show us the death of Queen Mother Helena Blackwood. Show us who truly poisoned her tea. Show us who lied and who was betrayed. The flames exploded outward. Silver fire spread across the walls, the ceiling, every surface of the chamber. And in that fire, images began to form, clear as memory, undeniable as death. I watched the crowd's faces as they saw what I had seen in Celine's reflecting pool. Vanya sitting with the Queen Mother, pouring tea, smiling and chatting about nothing of consequence. And then, when Helena looked away for just a moment, the vial appearing between her fingers, the drops falling into the cup. Gasps of horror echoed through the chamber. The vision shifted. Ronan, Kale's beta and supposedly his most loyal friend, meeting Vanya in shadow, discussing the witnesses they would bribe, the evidence they would plant, the story they would tell. She'll never suspect, Vision Vanya purred. The little white wolf is too naive to understand what's happening until it's too late. And my reward? Ronan's voice dripped with greed. A Luna of your own choosing. You've wanted that power for years. Now you'll have it. The crowd was shouting now, crying out in rage and disbelief. But the moonfire wasn't done. It showed Serena me as I had been, visiting the Queen Mother that morning at Helena's own invitation, showing the gentle lessons Helena had been teaching about Luna ceremonies, showing the love between them, the growing bond of mother and daughter-in-law. Then it showed Serena leaving, and Vanya arriving minutes later with the poisoned tea. No. Kale's voice was barely audible over the crowd's roar. No, no, no. But the flames kept showing truth after terrible truth. The herbs planted in Serena's chambers while she slept. The witnesses rehearsing their lies under Ronan's watchful eye. Vanya, laughing with her maid about how easy it had been to manipulate a grief-maddened alpha. And finally, perhaps worst of all, the flames showed Kale himself. They showed him in the moments after his mother's death, before the accusations, before the trial. Fenris howling in his mind that something was wrong. The mate bond pulsing with Serena's innocence, with her fear, with her desperate love. The wolf begging his human to stop, to listen, to feel the truth. They showed Kale pushing it all down, choosing to believe the easy story, choosing rage over reason, choosing Vanya's poison over his mate's truth. You knew. My voice cut through the chaos, silencing the crowd. Not consciously, not clearly, but some part of you knew, and you chose to ignore it. Kale had fallen to his knees. He stared at the images still flickering across the chamber walls, watching his own willful blindness play out in silver fire. I felt her innocence, he whispered, through the bond. I felt it, and I told myself I was imagining things. That grief was confusing me. That the evidence couldn't lie. The evidence didn't lie. It was manufactured. By the woman you welcomed back into your bed less than a month after you murdered your true mate. Where is she? Kale looked around wildly. Where is Vanya? She needs to answer for. A commotion near the back of the chamber answered his question. Vanya was trying to run. She'd managed to slip into the temple unnoticed, probably following Kale to ensure her deception remained hidden. But now, with her crimes projected across every surface in silver fire, she had nowhere to hide. She shoved through the crowd, her pregnant belly making her clumsy. Guards moved to intercept her, but she was faster than they expected, desperation lending her speed. She almost made it to the stairs. Stop! I spoke the word with divine authority, and Vanya's body obeyed instantly. She froze mid-step, one foot raised, arms outstretched toward the exit. Only her eyes could still move, rolling wildly with terror. I walked toward her slowly, letting the crowd part before me. The moonfire had calmed now, the visions fading, but its light still illuminated the chamber in shades of silver and white. Vanya! I stopped before her, close enough to see the sweat beating on her forehead, the pulse hammering in her throat. Did you really think you could escape divine judgment? She couldn't answer, couldn't move, could only watch as I raised my hand and pressed it to her swollen belly. One more truth remains hidden. I closed my eyes and reached into the fire again, into the goddess's endless sight. Moonfire, I command you, show us the father of this child. The flames flared one final time, and the image they showed was not Kale's face. It was Ronan's. The crowd erupted. I heard screaming, cursing, the sounds of a pack's faith shattering in real time. Through it all, Kale remained on his knees, staring at the image of his beta, his closest friend, tangled in passionate embrace with the woman who'd orchestrated everything. 3 months pregnant, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. She was already carrying Ronan's child when she poisoned your mother, Kale. The heir she promised you was never yours. It was always part of the plan. Install a new bloodline on the throne while you believed yourself the father. Vanya made a small sound in her throat. Not words, the compulsion wouldn't allow that, but something like a sob. I released her. She collapsed, gasping, clutching her belly. Please, she managed. Please, I can explain. Explain. The word came from Kale, and it held more rage than I'd ever heard from him. He rose from his knees, and for a moment, I saw the Alpha King he'd been, powerful, terrifying, capable of destroying anything in his path. Explain how you murdered my mother? How you framed my mate? How you've been spreading your legs for my beta while telling me you carried my heir? Kale, please, take her. He turned to his guards, his voice barely controlled. Take her and Ronan both. Chain them in the dungeons. We'll deal with them after. He stopped, turned to face me, and I watched recognition finally, fully dawn. Not just the knowledge that he'd wronged someone, not just the awareness of Vanya's betrayal, but true recognition, the understanding of exactly who stood before him. Serena. He whispered my name like a prayer and a curse and a confession all at once. It's you. You're alive. You came back. I let the silence stretch. Let him see the cold, hard thing I'd become. Let him understand that the woman who'd loved him was as dead as he'd believed. That woman died the night you threw her away. My voice carried to every corner of the chamber, to every wolf watching across the kingdom. I am the moon's judgment now. I turned to face the crowd, letting my power blaze outward, letting them see exactly what their false king had sacrificed. And your throne, I said, is forfeit. Chapter 5. The 5 kingdoms burned with the news. Not with actual fire, though some said that would come soon enough, but with the wildfire spread of truth. The moonfire's visions had been projected across every reflective surface in the Crescent Dominion. Wolves who hadn't been at the temple saw the judgment in pools of water, in polished shields, in the still surface of their morning tea. They watched Vanya poison the Queen Mother. They watched Ronan forge evidence. They watched their Alpha King ignore his mate bond and condemn an innocent woman to death. By dawn, the first packs had declared their loyalty to the Silver Wolf. By noon, half the kingdom had followed. I stood on the steps of the Temple of 3 Moons, watching messengers arrive in waves. Each one brought news of another pack breaking from Blackwood rule. The Northern Ridge Pack, the Silverstream clan, the warriors of the eastern border, who had served the Blackwood line for 3 generations. They came to me now. They knelt before me and swore their allegiance to the moon's vessel. And I accepted them, one by one, feeling the weight of responsibility settle onto my shoulders like a mantle made of stars. Your Radiance. The title had emerged organically. No one seemed quite sure what to call a goddess's living representative, so they'd invented something new. The delegation from the Shadowfang territory has arrived. I turned to find Marcus, the guard captain who had led Kale's search party, waiting at the base of the steps. He'd been among the first to swear loyalty to me after the judgment. His face still pale with the horror of what he'd witnessed. Send them up. The Shadowfang delegation consisted of 3 wolves in formal attire, their alpha's sigil emblazoned on their chests. They climbed the steps with the careful dignity of diplomats entering uncertain territory. Moonborn 1. The lead delegate bowed deeply. Alpha Gregor of Shadowfang sends his greetings and his pledge. He recognizes your divine authority and wishes to formalize an alliance between our territories. An alliance. I tasted the word. Not allegiance? The delegate hesitated. Shadowfang has been independent for centuries. Our Alpha is reluctant to submit to any rule but his own. Then he is wise to hesitate. I let power flicker through my eyes, silver light that made the delegates flinch. I am not interested in collecting subordinates like trophies. An alliance of equals serves my purpose better than forced submission. Relief washed over their faces. They'd come expecting demands, threats, the typical posturing of a new ruler seeking to expand her power. Instead, I offered partnership. It was a strategic choice as much as a principled one. I needed allies, not resentful vassals. The work ahead required willing cooperation, not coerced obedience. Tell Alpha Gregor I accept his alliance. We will formalize terms once the immediate crisis has passed. The delegates bowed again and retreated. I watched them go, already calculating how to leverage their support against the packs that still hesitated. You're good at this. The voice came from behind me. I didn't need to turn to know who it was. I had excellent training. I kept my back to Kale. Your mother spent hours teaching me the art of diplomacy. Before she was murdered by the woman you welcomed into your bed. Silence stretched between us. The bond pulsed, that impossible connection that had screamed back to life in the forest clearing. I felt his pain through it, his guilt, his desperate longing. The sensations washed over me like waves against stone. I let them break. I didn't bend. I deserve that. His voice was rough, stripped of the commanding authority he'd once wielded. I deserve worse. Yes. I finally turned to face him. You do. He looked terrible. The night had aged him further, dark circles beneath his eyes, his powerful frame somehow diminished. He'd removed his ceremonial armor and wore simple clothes, the kind a common wolf might choose. No crown, no sigils, nothing to mark him as royalty. What will happen to me? He asked quietly. I'll accept any sentence. Death if you command it. I won't fight. Death. I considered the word. You'd like that, wouldn't you? Quick ending. No more guilt, no more dreams of the mate you destroyed. You'd escape into oblivion while the rest of us clean up your mess. He flinched. That's not. I didn't mean. I know what you meant. You want absolution. You want to suffer enough that you feel you've paid your debt. I stepped closer, letting him feel the full weight of my divine authority. But that's not how justice works, Kale. You don't get to decide when you've atoned. The people you wronged decide. And I am the voice of everyone your false judgment ever hurt. His eyes dropped to the ground. Then tell me what to do. I'll serve however you command. As the lowest omega if that's what it takes. Just let me do something to make this right. The plea in his voice was genuine. Through the bond, I felt his sincerity. The desperate need to atone, to prove he was more than the monster his choices had made him. He would crawl if I asked. He would debase himself in any way I required. Part of me wanted to let him, but that part was the wounded woman who still woke in the night reaching for a mate who wasn't there. The moon's vessel needed to be better than that. Your sentence will be determined after the coronation, I said. Until then, you will remain in your quarters. Under guard. Coronation. His head lifted. I'm taking the throne. Not as Luna. That title belongs to a mate, and I have no mate. The words were deliberate, designed to wound. They hit their mark. I will rule as the moonborn queen, the first direct representative of Selene to hold power in 3,000 years. Serena. Don't. The command cracked through the air with divine force. Don't use that name. You lost the right to speak it when you condemned her to death. He swallowed hard but nodded. Then what should I call you? I considered. The delegates called me Moonborn One or Your Radiance. The common wolves whispered about the Silver Queen. None of those felt right coming from his lips. You will call me nothing, I decided. You will not address me at all unless I speak first. You will watch the coronation from the crowd, wearing the clothes of a commoner, bearing no mark of the rank you once held. And you will understand completely what you threw away. The pain in his eyes was almost satisfying. Almost. Now go. I have a kingdom to rebuild. He went. Vanya's sentence came first. I conducted the judgment in the temple's great hall, with hundreds of wolves watching. The former mistress stood before me in chains, her pregnant belly prominent beneath her prison clothes. Her beauty had curdled in the days since her exposure. Dark circles under her eyes, hair matted, skin pale as milk. Ronan stood beside her, similarly chained. The beta who had been Kale's closest friend, who had helped orchestrate the destruction of an innocent woman for the promise of a Luna of his choosing. Vanya of Nopak. I spoke with divine authority, letting my voice reach every corner of the hall. You have been found guilty of murder, conspiracy, and treason against the sacred bonds of mate and pack. Your crimes have brought the goddess's wrath upon an entire kingdom. Thousands have sickened. Hundreds have died. All because of your ambition. Vanya raised her chin defiantly. Even now, even facing judgment, she couldn't bring herself to show remorse. I did what I had to do. The white wolf was never meant to be Luna. She was a nobody from a nothing pack. I was supposed to be queen. And instead, you will be nothing at all. I rose from the throne I'd claimed. Ronan of no pack, your crimes mirror hers. You betrayed your alpha, your pack, and the sacred trust of friendship. You manufactured evidence that condemned an innocent woman. You fathered a child on another man's mate. Ronan said nothing. Unlike Vanya, he seemed to understand the futility of defiance. For these crimes, you are both sentenced to become rogues. Your pack bonds will be severed. Your names will be struck from every record. You will wander the deadlands for the rest of your natural lives, surviving as the very monsters you once feared. I paused, letting the sentence sink in. And the child? The hall went silent. Everyone wondered what would become of the baby, innocent of its parents' sins, but carrying their blood. The child will be taken at birth and raised by a foster pack far from here. It will never know its parents' names or their crimes. It will have a chance to be more than the darkness that created it. Vanya's composure finally cracked. You can't take my baby. You can't. I can do whatever I wish. Silver fire flared in my eyes. You murdered a queen. You framed an innocent woman. You plotted to place your lover's child on the throne through deception. Be grateful I'm letting your baby live at all. The guards dragged them away as Vanya screamed curses and threats. Her voice echoed through the halls long after she disappeared into the dungeons. I sat back on the throne and tried not to feel the hollow place where satisfaction should have been. The coronation took place 3 days later, under the full moon. I had chosen to hold it in the open air, on the hillside above the temple where the entire gathered crowd could witness. Thousands of wolves filled the slope. Packs from across the 5 kingdoms, commoners and nobles alike, all come to see history made. I wore a gown of silver and white, simple but elegant. No crown adorned my head. That was the point of the ceremony. The blackwood crown had been melted down, its gold and jewels distributed to the families who had lost loved ones to the wasting sickness. In its place, the temple smiths had forged something new. A circlet of pure silver, shaped like phases of the moon. Selene's crown, remade for a mortal vessel. I climbed the steps to the dais alone. No one would place this crown on my head. No alpha would grant me authority. I would take it myself as I had taken everything since my transformation. The crowd fell silent as I lifted the circlet. Wolves of the 5 kingdoms. My voice carried on divine power, reaching every ear. For 3 generations you have lived under false rule. The Blackwood line stole their throne through blood magic and maintained it through darkness. That ends tonight. I turned in a slow circle, letting every wolf see my face. I am Serena, once of the White Moon Pack. I was your Luna for 3 moons before I was falsely condemned and cast into the Deadlands to die. But death did not claim me. The Moon Goddess found me worthy and remade me as her vessel. I raised the circlet higher. I claim this throne not as a conqueror, but as a restorer. The old ways have been forgotten. The sacred laws have been broken. Tonight we begin the work of healing. I placed the crown on my own head. Silver fire blazed outward from my body, reaching toward the full moon above. For a moment, I felt Celine's presence more strongly than ever. The goddess moving through me, speaking with my voice. Hear the decrees of the moon. The voice that emerged was mine and not mine, layered with ancient power. No mate may be rejected without divine trial. The bond between fated wolves is sacred, and any who would break it must first prove their cause before the moonfire. No alpha rules without earning the goddess's blessing. The blood magic that has corrupted wolfkind for generations is hereby forbidden, punishable by death. And any who abuse the vulnerable, the Omegas, the elders, the pups who cannot defend themselves, will answer to the moon's wrath personally. The crowd knelt, not from compulsion this time, from genuine reverence. They bowed before the goddess made manifest, before the promise of justice they had been denied for so long. When Celine's presence receded, I was alone again, standing on the dais with a crown on my head and the weight of an entire civilization on my shoulders. I looked out at the kneeling masses and found Kale's face in the crowd. He wore the common clothes I'd commanded. He knelt with everyone else, his golden eyes fixed on me with an expression I couldn't fully read. Grief, awe, longing, acceptance. The bond between us pulsed, that impossible connection that should have died 3 months ago. I felt his wolf reaching toward me, felt Fenris crying out for his mate. I turned away. The celebration lasted until dawn. I moved through it like a ghost, accepting congratulations and pledges of loyalty, answering questions from curious delegates, playing the role of the new queen with practiced grace. But my heart wasn't in it. My heart was somewhere far away, in a forest clearing 3 months past, begging a golden-eyed king to listen. When the first light of morning touched the sky, I retreated to my chambers. The rooms that had once belonged to the Queen Mother, the woman who had welcomed me as a daughter, who had died because of Vanya's jealousy, were mine now. I'd had them cleaned and purified, every trace of the past scrubbed away. But ghosts lingered anyway, in the curve of a window, the pattern of the floor, the view of the mountains that Helena had loved. I was standing at that window when I felt him approach. The bond announced his presence before my ears did. That persistent, impossible connection, thrumming with desperate hope. You shouldn't be here. I didn't turn around. The guards let me pass. They said you'd given orders that I was to have access to you if I sought an audience. A pause. Did you? I wasn't sure why. Perhaps because part of me needed this conversation, needed to close the door properly before I could move forward. Say what you came to say, Kale. Then leave. He moved closer, not touching, but near enough that I could feel the heat of his body, smell that familiar scent of pine and winter wind. I know you can feel it, he said softly. The bond is still there, stronger than before somehow. My wolf has finally stopped howling. He's calm for the first time in 3 months because you're near. The bond should have died when you performed the severance ritual. It should have, but it didn't. He stepped closer still. Celine kept it alive. Why would she do that if there was no chance? I turned to face him, letting him see the cold fury in my eyes. You think the goddess preserved our bond so you could have another chance? So you could win me back with pretty words and sad eyes? The bond exists because the goddess finds it useful. A leash to keep you close, to ensure you serve the penance she requires. Don't mistake divine strategy for personal favor. The hope in his face crumbled. You truly hate me. I don't hate you. The admission surprised us both. Hatred would be simpler, cleaner. What I feel is... I stopped, searching for words. You were my mate, Kale. My other half. I loved you with everything I had. And you threw me away like garbage based on the word of a woman who was sleeping with your best friend. I know, and if I could take it back. You can't. I stepped away from him, putting distance between us. That's the point. You can't take it back. You can't undo what was done. The woman who loved you died in the Deadlands. What rose in her place is something else entirely. But the bond. The bond is a scar, Kale, a reminder of what was lost. It doesn't mean we can rebuild what you destroyed. He stood there, broken and desperate, and I felt nothing. Or rather, I felt everything. The pain, the love, the betrayal, the longing. But I held it all at arm's length. I had to. If I let myself feel it fully, I would shatter. Some broken things cannot be mended, I told him quietly. Some wounds are too deep. Some betrayals too complete. You need to accept that your redemption may never include my forgiveness. Tears slipped down his cheeks. The Alpha King who never showed weakness, weeping openly before the woman he'd wronged. Then let me earn it anyway. His voice cracked. Let me serve. Let me atone. Even if you never forgive me, even if the bond never heals, let me spend the rest of my life trying to deserve the second chance I'm not asking for. I studied him for a long moment. The divine power in me could read his soul, could see the truth of his intentions. He meant it, every word. He would serve until his dying breath if I demanded it. That was something, at least. Your penance has already been decided, I said. You will serve 100 days in atonement, not as a prisoner, as a servant. You will go to every pack that suffered under your rule. You will work alongside the wolves who lost loved ones to the sickness, who lost children to the barren plague, who lost homes to the withering crops. You will rebuild what your sins destroyed, stone by stone, with your own 2 hands. He nodded, accepting the sentence without argument. And when the 100 days are complete, we'll see. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even hope. But it was something less than absolute rejection. Now go. I have a kingdom to run. He went. The door closed behind him, and I was finally alone. I walked back to the window, staring out at the mountains as the sun rose over my new kingdom. The crown felt heavy on my head. The power thrumming beneath my skin felt like too much and not enough at the same time. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, greeting the dawn, celebrating the new order, and I allowed myself one tear. It slipped down my cheek, hot against my cold skin. A single drop of grief for everything I'd lost, for the woman I'd been, for the love I'd believed would last forever, for the mate who had shattered me so completely that even divine power couldn't put the pieces back together. In time, daughter, Celine's voice whispered through my mind, gentle as moonlight. Some mates must earn their second chance through fire. You were reforged in suffering. Perhaps he must be as well. The bond lives because I willed it, but its flowering is his burden to nurture. Watch what he becomes when everything is stripped away. Then decide if he is worthy of what remains of your heart. I wiped the tear away, straightened my spine, lifted my chin. There was no more time for grief. No more room for the woman who had loved Cale Blackwood. I was the moonborn queen now, and my people needed me. I called for my advisors and made my first decree. Below, in the dungeons that had been converted to simple chambers, Cale Blackwood received his orders. 100 days of service. 100 days of rebuilding what his false judgment had destroyed. Starting tomorrow with the wolves of Millbrook, the village where I had found my sister eating garbage behind the stables. He would learn their names, hear their stories, understand exactly what his blindness had cost. And maybe, somewhere in that journey, he would become someone worthy of the bond he'd so carelessly broken. Or maybe he wouldn't. Either way, I had a kingdom to rule. I sat down at my new desk, picked up my pen, and began to write the laws that would reshape wolfkind for generations to come. The moon's wrath had work to do. Thank you for watching this video. subscribe, like, and share this video to continue listening to this type of story daily and also to appreciate this community too. I would like to hear your wonderful opinion about this story. Please comment below.